Untamed is going to be untamed. It's going to be a little crazy. I want to talk to my people. I want to talk to my brothers and sisters. We can have grace and humility in how we interact with other people.
Oh, hot dog, look at you.
And nobody talked about what's really happening.
And let's have conversations about what truth is.
The Clinton Foundation, Apax Partners, the Islamic Circle of North America, Osama bin Laden, Grameen America, Shore Bank. While all of these might seem as if they're random, unconnected entities, what if in fact they were all connected?
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to part 4 of our series when we're breaking down the web that is infiltrated America, that is changing the way of America life, and the things that we're fighting against every day here. And people talk about who's operating in the shadows, who's controlling the narratives, right? Who are the puppeteers? We're bringing them to you today. We're bringing the names, we're bringing the organizations. You need to be aware of the players behind the scenes that are controlling the narrative and controlling the movements and controlling our politicians all at a blink of an eye. And when we're looking around asking, who's doing all this? Who's doing all this? And no one has an answer. Like we hear Soros, we hear Clinton, but those are the names everyone knows. We need to talk about the real names and the real players that are involved in the degradation of America. Right? We're talking about the Grameen Americas. We're talking about Apax Partners. We're talking about Ray Dalio. We're talking about Cathay Zoe. We're talking about Laura Tyson. We're talking about Sir Ronald Cohen of Apax, right? We're talking about these people today and how they are connected to what's going on in our society. And with that, we have B with us today, our great undercover military guy that comes to us, that shares and breaks down this mind web that he has created to share his knowledge all through verified reporting. We are bringing it to you today. B, welcome to the show.
Hey, Patrick, thanks for having me back, bud. Glad to be back. Had a little bit of a hiatus there.
Absolutely, and we're going to be up and rolling on this where we plan on pumping out at least 1 episode a week going forward because this map needs to be brought to the public's attention. So just so everyone knows, we're going to be cranking these out for the foreseeable future. And for your knowledge too, B, we're cranking these out, man. We're going to get this done.
Hopefully we crank them out faster than the thing expands because it seems to be growing at an exponential rate. Just keeping tabs on everything. So, but looking forward to it, man.
Absolutely. So yeah, let's take a look at this map today. Let's break it down. Damon, let's pop the map up on the screen for everyone to see. As you can tell, if you've been following us, this map has definitely evolved from the last time we shared, right? And that has all to do with B doing the work behind the scenes, finding the reports, tying the people together. And then also what's most importantly is just bringing the receipts, proving that this stuff is occurring. And today what we're going to be looking at is specifically here, we're going to be focusing in on Grameen America and then the branch off from them. So B, you want to talk about Grameen to the people?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So Grameen America is the US-based not-for-profit microfinancing institute, which was created out of Grameen Bank, which is a bank which was created for microfinancing purposes by a man named Muhammad Yunus, who's now the interim leader, at least for the next few weeks, of Bangladesh. He created Grameen Bank using funds from the Ford Foundation. He was granted seed money from the Ford Foundation, and he recruited a lot of people who ended up evolving into the democratic, philanthropic, and progressive apparatus. But his U.S. institution, which he stood up, is called Grameen America. And if you look at the board of directors for Grameen America, you'll see some familiar names on there that we've talked about previously in other episodes. For one, being Zoran Mamdani. His father is on the board of directors. for Grameen America. So really, when you look at this, you're able to connect, what might seem like two obscure entities, this Bangladeshi, politician right now, and this US-based not-for-profit microfinancing institute. But they're very much connected at the hip. And if you know anything about Bengali politics, Muhammad Yunus took over in Bangladesh last year. He cooed out the Awami League and Sheikh Hasina alongside the Jamaat-e-Islami, which is a very radical Islamist element we've talked about, probably ad nauseum at this point on the broadcast. So that's who he works with. You are the company you keep. So it's good that we keep up, keep the light on these networks and evaluate the relationship science behind there. But yeah, that's what we're looking at, man.
All well said. And if the viewers want to take just a look at the map and just take a moment to digest how these entities are all connected through Grameen Bank, right? I'm hovering on Grameen Bank now, and if you look down to the south, you see Muhammad Yunus, and you see how he's tied to Isabel Maxwell. But if you work your way up, right, Grameen Bank, you have look at the offshoots here: Hillary Clinton, Clinton Foundation, Ford Foundation, right? But we're going up here to Grameen America. And then we're going to focus in on a lot of players today. But these are not isolated. They work in unison, do they not? They're all tied together by one or two webs that allow for a major push, either culturally or politically, in America.
Oh, correct. Absolutely. And, you couldn't have said it better yourself, but I couldn't have said it better myself. Sorry. I think the very last slide that we're going to be presenting on this will really kind of drive it home and highlight how interconnected all this is. You see Shore Bank on there, which was Obama's entity. Well, the woman who co-founded Shore Bank worked for Muhammad Yunus and Grameen in Bangladesh right before she just so happened to have returned to Chicago and received grant seed money. She received her grant funding, her initial funding, also from the Ford Foundation. So when you're able to look at things through that lens, it all kind of makes a lot more sense. Now I understand this web on here. It's kind of a morass. It looks just like a jumbled, messy. But if you're able to index everything and just go through it, it really makes a lot of sense. So yeah, everything is 1 to 2 degrees of separation, and that's what we're here to highlight, my friend.
Yes, sir. And here are the puppeteers, everyone. Here are the ones that are behind the scenes that you may not know of, that you think may exist, may not know. Here they are. Here they are. Some are American, some are non-American, but they are the outside entities that are controlling basically everything that's happening within our country, while the American people just basically wither away and suffer under this. So the purpose of this is to expose it all, to get people to be aware, and to get some changes and hopefully some arrests made from this, because this stuff is going against the U.S. Constitution, a lot of this funding. Is it not? The funding, the treatment of American citizens. This stuff's illegal, is it not?
Well, it depends on where you're at, what they're doing, and if a judge is willing to enforce it. A lot of these entities, as we're going to see one entity in particular, Apax Partners, which we're going to get into, they are kind of at the crux of a lot of this, but they're actually primarily a UK-based private equity firm. Now, as a matter of fact, APAX stands for Alan Patrikoff Associates, and the X stands for International. They were the very first firm, so they were stood up in the late 60s and early 70s, depending on which time frame you're looking at, in the U.S. by a Hillary Clinton financier. He served in Obama's administration as well. His name was Alan Patrikoff. They stood up Apax Partners in the UK, and that was the very first private equity / venture capital firm to be stood up in the UK and France as well. So just to kind of give you an idea, these guys are really kind of like the OGs when it comes to this stuff. And as we'll see eventually later on during this broadcast, just how much of our elections apparatus they control. It's pretty much the whole thing, and you're going to hear another familiar name pop up with him as well. But how does Apax? We talk about these distinct relationships. How does Apax relate to Grameen America? What do they have in common? And if we could please go to the Apax charity doc, and we'll be able to read from there on page 8 of this document, and they'll kind of establish a relationship. So, if you guys want to go ahead and put that Apax charity document on the screen, and I'll be able to read. Perfect, thank you. Okay, so here, this was actual documentation pulled from the Companies House archives from the United Kingdom, because again, Apax Foundation primarily operates in the UK now. That's really kind of where the hub of like their business is, even though they were created in the US. So, start right here. The Apax Foundation, you see it right there up top, the trustees report. Achievements and performance continued. Grameen America, founded in 2007. Grameen America provides affordable capital, credit building, free savings accounts, and financial education to enable program participants to boost their income, build assets, enter the mainstream financial system, and create jobs in their communities. Grameen America serves low-income, primarily minority, women entrepreneurs who are underbanked and have been excluded from the mainstream financial system with limited opportunities for upward economic mobility. Grameen America provides microloans ranging from $2,000 to $15,000, predominantly to women with household income, family of 4 or less than $26,000 per year. The group's model, in which borrowers are required to form groups of 5 from the same community or area to be eligible for a loan, has helped the charity to maintain an astonishing 99% repayment record. In turn, the high loan repayment rate helps the women to obtain a good credit score and thus access to mainstream finance. The loans are used by borrowers to start home-based businesses ranging from catering, food trucks, to retail jewelry. The typical end use is to buy inventory or equipment. The Apax Foundation has supported Grameen America since 2009. A senior member of the Apax Partners team serves on Grameen America's National Advisory Board. So, just to give you a little bit of background about Grameen America and what they do, what they specialize in, these things called microfinancing. Oh, by the way, you should see what Jeffrey Epstein's comments on microfinancing are, and his regards to on Soros in that regard. But this just shows how interconnected these two entities actually are. So you have a member of the Apax Partners team who serves on Grameen America's advisory board, and we can actually see in the network on this web who some of those people are. So if we go back specifically, we'll see one name in particular associated with Apax Partners. That is John Megrue. So if we go back to the web and we pull that up, we can see John Megrue and just a little bit of information about Megrue.
There's his connection on the map for everyone to see. Co-chairman, board of directors, John Megrue, CEO, director, Grameen America. Can we pop a picture of him up too, Damon, so people could see who John Megrue is? There he is, gentlemen and ladies. There is one person. There's one of our puppeteers behind the scenes. So you get a picture and a name with a face now.
Yeah, and you'll also notice that he is partners with Ray Dalio over at Bridgewater Associates. And Ray Dalio himself is also affiliated very closely with Grameen America as well. He's actually a listed partner on there. If you go onto Ray Dalio's node, you'll see that there's a photo of him, a photo on there, which has an arrow pointing to his name. And these are, this was taken actually from Grameen America documentation. And, if you click on the link there, you'll be able to see, it also mentions Dalio being there as well on the link. So
Dalio,
these
here
are
it is. Right, I'm sorry, it's right here in the article. Hillary Clinton announces Grameen America's commitment to invest $50 million in Harlem. And then Grameen will partner with city community developer, the Upper Manhattan Empowerment Zone, and the Dalio Foundation to launch the new initiative. Grameen America believes in women as the engines of local economies.
And if you look at the photo, you'll see Hillary Clinton right next to Muhammad Yunus. Muhammad Yunus is obviously to the right of her. The woman on the left is Andrea Young, who's the CEO of Grameen America. But Hillary Clinton and Muhammad Yunus have a very long-standing relationship. They were introduced together back in the 80s by Hillary Clinton's former roommate. Back when Bill Clinton was still governor of Arkansas, they were introduced via Jan Piercy, who again was Hillary Clinton's roommate, but she also serves on the board of Shorebank. She's an executive director of that place called Shorebank. So, but we'll get to Shorebank another day. Let's keep on with the the beaten path for today. So yeah, that's just to give you an idea about Grameen and their affiliations with Dalio and Megrue and Grameen America, and Hillary Clinton as well. But if we go specifically in a little bit further into Grameen, we can see that she actually has some very close people related to Hillary Clinton within her camp. And that's one of those people is Cathay Zoi. She was from the Clinton White House, and she was also in their EPA. She was actually the director of the Energy Star program. If you guys want to navigate this map a little bit better, you could just go up to the top left, right next to the GC, and click the magnifying glass and be able to query something specifically from there if you're looking for a specific point of reference. In this case, Cathay Zoi. But if you actually click on her node, you will see that it takes you to her page for Apax Partners. So you can read all about her and her affiliation with not only a Clinton network, but with Clinton administration, but also with the Obama administration, wherein she served as well. So that's Cathay Zoi, and there's also over here Miss Laura D. Tyson. If we look at there, we can also see her. She was also part of the Clinton White House as well. She was actually on the board of the Clinton administration. She was actually serving on one of the executive committees. So. Yeah, again, these people are all very intimately tied into the Democrat apparatus, but they're also the ones who are really funding a lot of these mechanisms that we're seeing. And again, the core node in all of this now between Grameen and the Democrats is Apax Partners. Now, Apax Partners, again, as I told you guys about, was created by Alan Patrikoff, right? So he had actually relied on two other guys to extend it overseas. Again, I told you it's the first PE firm in the UK and France. So the man who stood up Apax in the UK alongside Alan Patrikoff was a man by the name of Sir Ronald Cohen. Now, if we go into the map and we actually query his name, we'll see that he actually has quite a few interesting different connections, whether it be the Bridge Fund or Partners Capital. Partners Capital is actually a firm he had established alongside of Sir Jacob Rothschild. So, again, if we go back into the main map, and we click on the node, we'll be able to see a little bit of his background. So if you're looking at this, you can see it says, quote, even so, many of those who attended the annual summit of the Global Steering Group for Impact Investing in Delhi in 2016 just have been stunned to hear the language used by former refugee turned multimillionaire investor Sir Ronald Cohen. Comrades, he began, albeit with a tongue firmly in cheek, it's clear that capitalism in its present form has fundamental flaws. It's not delivering on its promise to share prosperity and to bring social progress for all. End quote. That was a direct quote from Sir Ronald Cohen, who is an Egyptian-born UK citizen who is heavily invested also into things like the Portland Trust, which is a Palestinian redevelopment project. That's going into a whole other argument regarding Palestinian redevelopment and what's happening in that regard. But his other work in Apax has been largely based around social justice initiatives and just basically the progressive agenda, right? You heard him. He's very Keynesian in his economic philosophy. You hear him. He said comrades. He said that as tongue in cheek, but if you read some of his other literature and comments, you'll see that he very much has Marxist tendencies. So again, they're using the same method. The Marxists use. They infiltrate the state so that way they can proliferate their Marxist ideology within, the political realm. They do the same thing with economics. They have infiltrated the economic realm, the capitalist realm, so to speak, and they use that to subvert it from within and proliferate, this subversive ideology throughout. And that's why we're seeing a lot of these pushes towards things like ESG and the global steering group, which he actually pioneers, and the Bridges Fund, which is another Palestinian redevelopment initiative, and Partners Capital, which he established alongside, again, as I alluded to, Sir Jacob Rothschild. So he's a very prominent individual. But most of your viewers have probably never heard of him. So, with that, we can just go ahead and move into. I think we've kind of established that relationship between Apax and Grameen now. But if we can pivot back a little bit to the Ford Foundation and kind of we'll be able to get a little bit more into it from that. Because again, the impetus really for a lot of this is the Ford Foundation. Now they don't have a lot of connections on here, but they do have the ones which they do have are indeed quite relevant, quite prominent. You'll see the director of the Ford Foundation PIDE program was a man named Nurul Islam. Nurul Islam was actually one of the leading figures of the Jamaat-e-Islami movement. And again, that's going back into some of the other conversations we've had previously about this. But Ford Foundation was also pivotal in the fact that they granted the seed funding to Grameen Bank. So if you look at Muhammad Yunus's public testimony, he'll say that he started it, from scratch, that he never got anything from it. But if you actually go in to the Ford Foundation's archives, as you can see on here, if you click this link, it will bring up that whole brochure. If you guys want to go review it for yourself in the future, you can. Or there you go, if you want to go ahead and bring it up right now. I think we got some time. But if you scroll down here, it gives you a timeline of their whole events. I don't know. I really don't know their body of work, so to speak. But you'll notice there's one that's actually not on here as well. So they funded, as was seen here, if you go down to page 5, you'll see 1973, a new kind of bank, right?
Yep.
That was the first kind, right? The foundation finances the creation of what is now Shore Bank Corporation, one of the first community development banks in the United States, serving businesses, individuals, nonprofits, and faith-based organizations located in low-income communities. It has become a model for community development finance institutions, right? Now, what do we see a little bit below that with innovation? What's right under there?
Early micro finance.
That's right. 1976, early microfinance. The foundation's Bangladesh office makes a grant to the University of Chittagong's economics department and Muhammad Yunus to help launch a project that landless people, primarily women, can use credit and repay loans. This microfinance demonstration evolves into Grameen Bank, which by 2005 has outstanding loans of more than 300 million and cumulative disbursements of more than 400 million. Eunice and Grameen Bank were awarded the 2006 Nobel Peace Prize. So again, you had that really interesting note. And another fun fact about this as well, while we're discussing microfinance, there was a third really interesting connection between the Ford Foundation and these microfinancing schemes. If you go back before, Ann Dunham, Obama's mother, when she was in Indonesia and Pakistan, actually, for a little bit as well, she specialized, she worked with the World Bank, actually, specialized in creating microfinancing schemes. Now, do you want to guess who gave her grant seed funding money for that as well?
No.
It was the Ford Foundation.
Jeez. Was the Ford Foundation always left? Am I just blindsided by this? Have they always been this way and I'm just becoming aware of it now? Or were they hijacked at some point in the 70s and 80s and changed course?
Oh, they were very much hijacked. As a matter of fact, the Ford Foundation kind of has the Ford company, let's just say, by the balls. But yeah, Henry Ford, the Ford family itself was basically run out of any type of control. The Ford Foundation around the mid 70s. Some would say 76, but there's a little bit of conflict around that. There's a little discussion to be had there. But basically, the Ford Motor Company has no control now over the Ford Foundation. Instead, has to continuously fund it until the charter runs out, which they keep. They're going to keep changing it. So that's who's funding this.
And it's purposeful keeping the name Ford Foundation because it keeps the people oblivious to what it's actually doing, because people believe it's tied to the Ford Card Company and then pro-America, right? All that stuff. So people don't even look at it anymore. Am I right
and it's really kind of oh yeah, absolutely. It's kind of a representation of the subversion going on within the culture war itself. But it's really interesting to see all this stuff coming out now about Ford Foundation and what they're financing. But when you look at who was actually running the Ford Foundation, then it was a guy named George Bundy, who was basically the most rabid pro-Vietnam guy you could imagine out there. And when I say people need to understand that the Communist Party within the USA had infiltrated the U.S. intelligence agencies long before, and they did proactively fight against the Soviets. The Communist Party in the USA, they worked with the Soviets to an extent. You could just ask Jamie Raskin's father, Marcus Raskin. Whole nother story.
Unreal.
But
unreal.
But there were radical elements like James Angleton, who was also thrown out too, because he was very extremely lefty. Like George Bundy was considered, rogue in some regards. So what does he do? He goes then and takes over the Ford Foundation, and this is what we get now. We get this soft power policy of an eternal cycle of coup d'états worldwide. So. Yeah, it's really interesting. And again, these people all act within like this same network. Like for example, getting back on to Apax, Patricia Clarity, if we want to go ahead and bring her up and go there as well. I think we've discussed the Ford Foundation ad nauseum at this point. So if we go over here, we could actually see Patricia Clarity. And who was that? Well, Patricia Clarity was actually one of the co-founder of Apax Partners. As a matter of fact, yes, that's her. She was the very first junior partner ever hired by Alan Patrikoff. and she was tapped by Clinton directly to lead the U.S. Russia Investment Fund. Now, why is that interesting? Why does that matter? Well, it just goes to show that relationship as well. And again, I implore you guys, click on these links and read about these people. She could tell you everything about it just from this one article alone. And again, when these people talk, listen to what they're saying. Okay, so again, this talks about 1969 Apax Partners, but beginning in 2005. So if we go all the way back to the Clinton administration in 1993 and 1984, they pushed legislation through for what was called the U.S. Russia Investment Fund. And what this did was it was basically a fund used to push private equity, push private business back into the post-Soviet economy. So what ended up happening was, in the Nation did a really good article on this. You can say what you want about their political inclinations, but they did a really good article called "The Harvard Boys Do Russia," and it discusses this very thing. And when you contrast that today, when with what's going on with this whole Russiagate, Trump's a Russia puppet thing. You really kind of see the hypocrisy. As a matter of fact, you look one article in here, quote, Clarity should know what works in Russia. She has been investing in the country since 1994 when U.S. President Bill Klain asked her to come along on a trip to visit Boris Yeltsin. And then it talks about how this whole thing basically was born from that. And nowadays it's actually called Delta Private Equity. And it's really in control of Russia's direct investment fund and their sovereign wealth fund. So Russia's main source of sovereign, institutional wealth is actually still controlled by people like Leon Black and Schwartzman and a couple others. So it kind of makes you wonder what's really going on behind the scenes with this whole Russia-Ukraine thing, at least in my mind. But maybe I'm being conspiratorial. But yes, so that is, that's Patricia Clarity. But there's another interesting aspect to that as well, because Shorebank simultaneously was also tasked with creating another Russia small bank investment fund. And that's kind of, that whole web is just going to be something else entirely to dissect at a future date. But just this kind of gives you an idea. We're talking about Russia post-Soviet reinvestment. We're talking about, this guy, prime minister over, interim chief advisor is what they call him in Bangladesh. And how does it connect to all these not-for-profit institutes which operate almost with impunity in the U.S.?
Yeah,
but people rarely hear about them.
They know how the system works, and they're fully taking advantage of it. They understand these NGOs and all these nonprofits get government money with no government checks, and they're just basically given carte blanche to go do whatever they're doing. And this is the result of a lot of it. And we see what happened in Minnesota with the Somali fraud. I know it's not tied into the map directly, but it's the same concept where the government's not overseeing what's actually happening within their own borders, which leads to what's going on. Either they willfully turn the blind eye to what's happening because they're getting their back scratched and they're getting kickbacks from it, or they're just willfully ignorant.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree with you more. And really, the reason this is allowed to happen is because they have such an intimate relationship with the political realm. But that doesn't happen organically. These people are placed. And you begin to see this when you actually, again, do what I've done here and map all this out. One key node would be Ron Klain and Skoll Center. So Ron Klain is actually the connecting factor between a lot of these different institutions. He's a member of Skoll Center, which is also very closely partnered with Apax Partners. But Ron Klain, if you look at some of his other body of work, and Skoll Center was created by the founder of eBay, Jeff Skoll. He's the dude who created that. And again, it just follows that usual social justice, global impact, environmental philosophy, philanthropic philosophy. But, Ron Klain is one of the senior advisors and the board members of the Skoll Center. But Ron Klain, he has a very close working relationship with Obama to the point where, he was vice president Gore's chief of staff at one point during the Clinton administration. And, he was Biden's chief of staff. And I mean, he was Obama's Ebola czar. Yeah, he's right. He's considered, again, the external threat advisor to the Skoll Foundation, chairman of the advisory boards for Higher Ground Labs. Now, when we get to Higher Ground Labs, I can then bring it back to what we talked about at the onset of the show and how they're involved in our voting and fundraising and politically activist organizations. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of trouble talking today. Tongue's a little tied. But if we go into Higher Ground Labs, we'll be able to really kind of see just how these guys kind of mesh in, and they do work in concert a lot with Apax Partners. As a matter of fact, they share a lot of intersection, and I'll lead off with this Politico article discussing Higher Ground Labs. Quote, fearing a tech deficit, a trio of leading Democrat operatives is set to unveil a new organization Monday, which will push their party to focus on building political technology that's not just centered on presidential campaigns. The initiative, named Higher Ground Labs, intends to provide fellowships for up-and-coming progressive political tech entrepreneurs and to invest in young projects that can help benefit down-ballot Democratic candidates as well as presidential ones. The group will be led by former President Barack Obama's 2012 online organizing director, Betsy Hoover, private equity executive and former Obama White House Special Assistant Shomik Dutta, and Obama White House Deputy Chief Technology Officer Andrew McLaughlin, a former top official at tech companies such as Google and Tumblr. Higher Ground Labs says it's already brought in its first $1 million in commitments. End quote. So that's just to kind of give you an idea of how they're building into this progressive tech apparatus. And when you look at what Higher Grounds has actually produced, if you want to, Mr. Producer, go and throw up that Higher Ground Labs snapshot, and we can really begin to see a lot of this. So this was actually a document produced in 2022 by Higher Ground Labs. And if you look at this, it's an outlay of their whole network, their whole system. And if you really zoom in, you'll see a lot of familiar faces on there. You'll see NGP Van. What is NGP Van? Well, it's something we've talked about before on this show. NGP Van is owned by ThoughtWorks, which is Roy Neville Singham. As a matter of fact, Singham actually went private twice with Apax Partners, because NGP Van is owned by Apax Partners.
That name's familiar.
Yeah, it is. NGP Van was bought out originally by ThoughtWorks. It was owned by ThoughtWorks. As a matter of fact, it was originally called NGP and Van, and ThoughtWorks was actually working with Seth Rich in the DNC to create a national voter ID database. You'll see other entities in here under volunteer and activist mobilization. One of those is Mobilize. Mobilize is also owned by Apax Partners. As a matter of fact, if you were to overlay this with their portfolio of Apax Partners, you would see that there's probably a lot of very close connections. Probably over 75% of this map has no more than a second-degree connection to Apax Partners. And that's all by design. You'll see over here donation portals, Bonterra, NGP Van, Engaging Networks, Goodstock, Act Blue.
Yep.
Act Blue. So again, we're really kind of getting into the weeds with this, and Apax Partners basically has the keys to the kingdom for all of this information. They're effectively a British private equity firm at this point. Like that's their model. So we've got to do a lot to be able to get these guys out of it. But this is where the bread's being buttered here for people who are focusing on election integrity and voter initiatives, as well as going after again the Somali fraud. Because look at this: these donation portals, these third-party payment systems. Apax Partners, throughout their whole portfolio, controls the third-party payment processes for over 650,000 NGOs. They control background checks through their portfolio for companies which conduct over 10 billion background checks a year. So they're getting all that information. They're accruing all of it. They have access to all of it. So they know how to create it. They know how to fake it because they're the ones who are authenticating it. You know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah, I do. Unfortunately, yes, I do. In 2026, unfortunately, yes, I do. I completely understand. Now, hopefully, our viewers can start to digest this and understand as well just how massive and comprehensive this is. Nothing's done by accident. Everything's done by design. And here we are. Hopefully, you guys are learning something from today's show. Hopefully, you'll watch today's show. Hopefully, you ask questions from today's show. Hopefully, you tune in for our next episode, because we're going to keep unpacking these things and bringing it to you here so that you're informed and then take it from there. But you can't do anything if you don't know anything first. So that's why we're here today. B, thanks so much for dropping this on us. Great episode today.
Hey, awesome, man. Appreciate it, brother.